The quiet waves, the ocean stretched endlessly beneath a soft afternoon sun, its shimmering surface reflecting gentle streaks of gold and blue. A quiet breeze swept across the deck of a luxurious yet simple yacht, gliding steadily over calm waters. Keanu Reeves stood at the edge, his eyes tracing the horizon. His hands rested lightly on the railing, his face calm but distant, as if searching for something beyond the line where the sea met the sky. There was a deep silence around him, broken only by the rhythmic sound of waves brushing against the hull. It was peaceful, yet heavy with thought. The trip had not been planned. Keanu had been filming overseas for months, moving from one city to another, surrounded by cameras and strangers. Exhaustion had started to seep into his bones, the kind that sleep could not fix. When the chance came for a few days away, he accepted without hesitation. It was supposed to be just him, the sea, and the quiet. But then, unexpectedly, Sandra Bullock had agreed to join. She had texted him the night before, saying she needed a break too. Her message was short but sincere. Maybe peace sounds better when shared. And so, here they were, far from the noise of the world, sharing a silence that neither found awkward. It was a silence that spoke more than words ever could. Keanu turned slightly, hearing the faint sound of laughter behind him. Sandra was sitting near the bow, her legs crossed, a book open in her lap. Strands of her hair danced with the wind, catching bits of sunlight. She looked up and smiled, that familiar warm smile that had stayed the same through years of friendship. "You look like you're trying to talk to the sea," she said lightly. Keanu chuckled softly. "Maybe it listens better than people do." She closed her book, walking toward him slowly. "You always find peace in strange places," she replied. He nodded. "Maybe peace finds me when I stop looking." There was a pause, long and easy. Birds flew overhead and the sea seemed to hum beneath them. But something about the stillness made Sandra look at him more carefully. She noticed the slight tension in his shoulders, the way his fingers tapped the railing in a quiet rhythm, the kind he often did when something weighed on his mind. "You're thinking about him again, aren't you?" she asked softly. Keanu's eyes didn't leave the horizon. "Yeah, my friend. It's been a year now." Sandra placed her hand gently on his arm. "You did everything you could." "Sometimes it doesn't feel like enough," he whispered. The pain of loss still lingered, hidden beneath his calm expression. Keanu had always carried his grief quietly, never wanting to burden others. But it was there, in the way his eyes softened when someone mentioned kindness, in how he went out of his way to make others smile. It was as if he was constantly trying to repay the world for the moments it had taken from him. "He would have wanted you to live, Keanu," Sandra said. "Not just breathe." He smiled faintly, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I know. That's why I'm here. To try." As the yacht continued forward, a distant island appeared ahead, a faint shape surrounded by mist. Sandra pointed toward it. "That's the place, right? The one you told me about?" He nodded. "Yeah. I came here years ago, before everything changed. It's quiet, untouched. I thought we could anchor there for a while," she grinned. "Sounds perfect," but as they approached, something shifted. The wind grew stronger, the waves a little rougher. Sandra steadied herself as the yacht rocked slightly. Keanu moved toward the controls, his calm expression replaced by quiet focus. "Weather wasn't supposed to change today," she said, watching the clouds thicken above them. "It happens fast out here," he replied. "We'll be fine." The next few minutes passed tensely. The sky darkened, and a deep rumble echoed across the horizon. Rain began to fall, soft at first, then heavier. Keanu tightened his grip on the wheel, while Sandra secured the deck cushions and closed the cabin doors. "You sure you don't need help?" she called out. "Just stay steady," he answered. "It'll pass soon," but the storm came faster than expected. Waves began to rise, crashing against the sides with growing force. The yacht tilted sharply, making Sandra stumble before catching the rail. Lightning flashed in the distance, lighting up the gray sky. Keanu moved quickly, adjusting the sails, his movements sure and calm despite the chaos. Years of experience had taught him how to stay grounded even when nature turned wild. But this storm was unlike the others. Too sudden, too fierce. A loud crack split the air, followed by the sound of something breaking. Sandra's eyes widened as one of the ropes snapped free, whipping violently across the deck. Keanu reached for it, grabbing it before it could cause damage. Rain drenched his clothes, his hair sticking to his face, but he didn't flinch. "Get inside!" he shouted. "Not without you!" she yelled back. The wind howled around them, but in that chaos, there was something unspoken between them, an understanding built over decades of shared trust. She ran to his side, holding onto the railing as he guided the yacht through the turbulent waves. For what felt like hours, they fought against the storm, and then slowly the rain began to ease. The clouds thinned, and sunlight broke through in fractured beams, painting the sea gold once again. Sandra collapsed onto a seat, breathing heavily, soaked and shivering. Keanu sat opposite her, his hands still trembling slightly, though his voice remained steady. "You okay?" She nodded, laughing breathlessly. "Remind me never to call your trips peaceful again." He smiled weakly. "You wanted adventure." They both laughed, the tension fading into relief. The storm had passed, but something about it felt different. Keanu looked around, realizing the island was much closer than before. They had been pushed off course, but toward something. The island was larger now, clearer. White sand glowed under the sunlight, and dense green trees covered its center. It looked untouched, almost mysterious. "Well," Sandra said, standing slowly, "maybe this is where peace wants us." Keanu's gaze lingered on the shore. Something about the island stirred an old memory. He couldn't place it, but the feeling was strange, familiar yet distant, like a dream half remembered. As they lowered anchor and prepared to step onto the sand, the air grew still again. The ocean around them was calm, but Keanu's heart wasn't. He didn't know why, but something deep inside whispered that this journey wasn't just a trip. It was the beginning of something that would test everything he believed about loss, hope, and the meaning of peace. As he looked at Sandra stepping onto the shore, smiling at the sunlight breaking through the trees, he couldn't shake the sense that the island was waiting for them, for him, and when his foot touched the sand, he felt it. A sudden, unexplainable chill, like the past had just found him again. The island of echoes. The sand felt warm beneath their feet as Keanu and Sandra stepped off the yacht, the storm clouds drifting away behind them like a fading memory. Sunlight returned, spilling across the shoreline, illuminating every grain of sand until it looked almost golden. The sea had calmed completely, but the silence it left behind carried a strange weight. It wasn't empty, it was expectant, like the island itself was holding its breath. Sandra shaded her eyes and looked around. "It's beautiful," she said softly, but a little too quiet. Keanu nodded, his gaze fixed on the line of trees ahead. "Yeah, like no one's been here for years." "You sure this is the same island you came to before?" He hesitated. "It looks familiar, but something feels different." They began to walk inland, their footprints trailing behind them in the sand. The air smelled of salt and wildflowers, and the faint hum of insects echoed through the stillness. Keanu felt a strange pull, as if something deep within the island called him forward. The memory of his earlier visit came back in fragments. Laughter, campfire light, a voice he could no longer place. Sandra walked beside him, her curiosity growing. "So what brought you here back then?" she asked. "A friend," he said quietly. "We were both going through a rough time. He said this place could help us remember what mattered." "Did it?" Keanu took a deep breath. "For a while. Until life happened again." They stopped at the edge of a small clearing. In the center stood an old wooden structure, half hidden under vines but still standing strong. Keanu's heart skipped when he saw it. "This was our shelter," he whispered. "We built it together." Sandra approached it carefully, brushing away some leaves from the entrance. "It's still solid," she said. "Whoever built this knew what they were doing." He smiled faintly. He did. He was good with his hands. Said nature listens better than people. They stepped inside. Sunlight filtered through the cracks in the roof, casting moving patterns on the dusty floor. It was empty except for a few weathered planks and a rusted lantern. The smell of old wood filled the air, bringing back waves of nostalgia Keanu hadn't expected to feel. Sandra turned toward him. You miss him, don't you? Every day, Keanu replied. He was the kind of person who made silence feel safe. She walked closer, her voice gentle. Sounds like you were that for each other. He nodded slowly. He disappeared one night after we came back from this island. No one ever found out what happened. The silence that followed was deep and heavy. Sandra didn't press further. She could see it in his eyes, the quiet grief that never truly faded. She placed her hand lightly on his shoulder, grounding him. Maybe you came back here for a reason, she said. Keanu looked toward the sea through the cracks in the wall. Maybe the island wants to tell me something I never heard before. They decided to stay for a while. The yacht was anchored safely, and the air was calm again. Sandra gathered some driftwood while Keanu repaired the small fire pit near the entrance. By evening, a soft fire crackled between them. The sky turned shades of orange and violet, and the waves shimmered like liquid glass. Sandra leaned back on a log. You ever think about how strange it is? She asked. We spend so much of our lives searching for meaning, and sometimes it's right where we started. Keanu smiled faintly. Maybe meaning isn't found. Maybe it finds us when we're ready. That sounds like something your friend would have said, she teased. He laughed quietly. Yeah, he always believed everything happens in cycles. Like the sea, always returning, never still. They sat in silence for a while, watching the fire dance. Then, somewhere beyond the trees came a faint sound, a rustle, followed by what sounded like a low hum. Both of them turned sharply. Did you hear that? Sandra whispered. Keanu nodded, standing slowly. Yeah, stay here. He moved toward the trees, the firelight fading behind him. The sound came again, clearer now. It wasn't just the wind. It was rhythmic, like footsteps moving through leaves. Keanu's pulse quickened. Who's there? He called out. No answer. Only the faint whisper of the forest. He took another step forward, and suddenly a shape darted between the trees. He caught only a glimpse, a flash of white fabric, quick and silent. His instincts kicked in, and he followed, moving deeper into the shadows. The path twisted through dense growth, branches brushing against his arms. Finally, he emerged into a small clearing and stopped. In front of him stood a small wooden marker, half buried in the soil. Carved into its surface was a single name, his friend's. Keanu froze. The world seemed to narrow into that single sight. The engraving was faded, but there was no mistake. His heart pounded, his breath shallow. He crouched down, touching the edge of the wood. How? He whispered. The sound came again, a soft humming, this time directly behind him. He turned sharply, but the clearing was empty. The air felt cold suddenly, though the night was warm. Then he heard it. A voice, faint but unmistakable, carried on the wind. You came back. Keanu spun around, his chest tightening. Who's there? No reply. Only silence. He backed away slowly, his eyes scanning the trees. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the forest returned to stillness. When he finally returned to the fire, Sandra looked up, worry etched on her face. Keanu, what happened? He sat down slowly, his eyes still distant. There's something here, he said. Something connected to him. What do you mean? He looked at her, his voice low. There's a grave, with his name on it. Sandra's eyes widened. But he disappeared, right? He was never found. Keanu nodded, staring into the flames. I think this island knows more than it should. She reached across the fire, taking his hand. Then we'll find out. Together. The fire crackled softly, casting shadows that danced across their faces. Beyond the flickering light, the forest seemed to move with its own quiet rhythm, and somewhere, just beyond sight, a faint whisper rose again. Soft, like a memory that refused to fade. As the moon climbed higher, Keanu lay awake, staring at the stars. The sound of the waves blended with the pulse of his heartbeat. He didn't know what the island wanted to show him, but he could feel it. The past wasn't done speaking. He closed his eyes, and the voice returned, clearer this time, echoing inside his mind. There's something you never saw, Keanu. Something I left for you. He opened his eyes suddenly, his breath sharp. and for a moment, he could have sworn he saw a figure standing near the edge of the trees, watching. The message in the storm, the night stretched long and uneasy. The fire had burned down to glowing embers, and the forest beyond whispered softly, as if breathing secrets into the wind. Keanu lay still, his thoughts heavy, replaying every sound and shadow from earlier. The faint voice, the grave, the strange pull he felt when he touched the wooden marker. It all blended into something that felt more like memory than reality. Sandra was still awake too. She sat near the fire, her arms wrapped around her knees, eyes fixed on the distant waves. "You think it was real?" she asked quietly. Keanu sat up slowly, his voice calm but uncertain. "I don't know, but that grave was there. I didn't imagine it. And the voice?" He hesitated. It sounded like him. The weight of those words lingered in the air. Neither spoke for a while. Only the sea filled the silence, steady and endless. When morning finally came, the sunlight felt sharper, almost too bright after the strange night. Birds moved between the trees, their songs piercing the stillness. Keanu and Sandra packed a small bag and headed back toward the clearing. Keanu's steps were slower this time, more deliberate, as if every movement carried the burden of the unknown. When they reached the grave, Sandra knelt beside it. The wooden surface looked older in daylight, its carvings faint but visible. She traced her fingers over the name and frowned. "It's weathered," she said softly. "This has been here for years." Keanu stared at it, his mind spinning. "But that's impossible. We searched for him for months. This island was checked. Maybe not this part," she suggested. "Maybe the storm changed things. Maybe it brought us here for a reason." He looked up sharply. "You really believe that?" She met his eyes. "Don't you?" Her words hit something deep inside him. He had always believed in signs, in small coincidences that led to truth. Maybe the storm wasn't an accident. Maybe it was meant to push them here, to this very spot. They began searching around the area, moving through the thick undergrowth. After a while, Sandra called out, "Keanu, come here!" He rushed over. She was standing beside a small wooden box, half buried near a tree. It was old, its edges worn, but the metal latch still intact. Keanu's pulse quickened as he brushed away the dirt and opened it carefully. Inside was a small notebook wrapped in cloth, and beneath it, a weathered photograph. He lifted the photo first. It was the two of them, him and his friend, standing right there on the same beach years ago. They were younger, smiling, carefree. Keanu's throat tightened. Sandra looked at the notebook. "Is it his?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah." This was his handwriting. He opened it. The first few pages were filled with sketches. Trees, the old shelter, the sea. Then words appeared. Messy but readable. "If you're reading this, it means you came back." Keanu froze, his heart thudding. Sandra leaned closer. "Read more. I knew you would someday. I knew peace would call you home. There are things you never knew. Things I couldn't say before I left. I wasn't running away, Keanu. I was trying to protect you." Keanu looked up, confused. "Protect me? From what?" He turned the pages, reading faster. "The storm that night wasn't natural. Someone came for us. Someone we trusted. I found something here, something that wasn't supposed to exist. I buried it where the sun meets the trees. If you find this, be careful. Not everything lost should be found." A chill went through him. Sandra whispered, "This sounds like a warning." Keanu stared at the pages again. "We thought he disappeared at sea. But if he was hiding something?" He stopped, his voice fading as he read the final words on the page. "If the waves ever bring you back, follow the light when the wind changes. I'll be there." They exchanged a long, tense glance. "Follow the light?" Sandra repeated. "What does that mean?" "I don't know," Keanu said, closing the notebook slowly. "But he left it for a reason." For the rest of the afternoon, they explored the area near the edge of the forest. The sun hung low, its golden rays filtering through the trees. Keanu's mind raced, trying to piece together his friend's final message. There were no footprints, no tools, no sign of anyone else, but the air felt charged, as if the island was alive with unseen energy. As the day faded, clouds began to form again, soft and gray at first, then darker. The wind shifted direction suddenly, carrying a faint sound, the same low hum from the night before. Sandra looked at Keanu. The wind's changing. He turned toward the sea. The sunlight was breaking through the clouds in one narrow beam, touching the far end of the beach, near a cluster of rocks. "The light," he said quietly. That's what he meant. They ran across the sand, the wind rising around them. The beam of light glowed brighter as they approached, landing directly on a large, smooth rock near the water's edge. Something metallic glimmered beneath it. Keanu dropped to his knees and began digging through the sand. Sandra helped, both of them working quickly as the waves crept closer. After a few minutes, Keanu's hands hit something solid. A metal container, rusted but sealed tight. He pulled it out, breathless. "This must be it," Sandra said. "Whatever he found." Keanu hesitated before opening it. The latch creaked, and the lid fell back with a faint metallic sigh. Inside was a small black device covered in dirt and corrosion. Beside it lay another folded note. He unfolded it carefully. "This isn't what it seems. If you find this, destroy it. They'll come if you don't," Sandra frowned. "Destroy it? What is it?" Keanu examined the device. It looked old, but there was a faint light still blinking inside it, impossibly still active. "It's some kind of transmitter," he said slowly. "But why would he hide it here?" A low rumble echoed from the horizon. Thunder again, but this time it didn't sound natural. It was rhythmic, pulsing, like machinery in the distance. Sandra's eyes widened. "Keanu, listen." He looked up. Over the waves, faint lights flickered on the horizon, too steady, too deliberate to be lightning. "Ships?" she asked. He shook his head slowly. "No, not ships. Something else." The wind picked up, stronger now, tugging at their clothes. The device in his hand began to hum, the light blinking faster. Keanu's instincts screamed at him. "We need to go. Now!" They ran back toward the shelter as the first drops of rain began to fall again. The storm had returned, sudden and violent. Behind them, the sound of the sea grew louder, almost like an engine roaring beneath the waves. By the time they reached the fire pit, the sky had turned black. Keanu placed the device on the ground, staring at it. It continued to pulse, the sound growing sharper. "What if this is what killed him?" Sandra whispered. Keanu didn't answer. He grabbed a heavy stone and lifted it high. "If he wanted it destroyed, then that's what I'll do." He brought the stone down hard. The device cracked open, sparking briefly before going silent. For a moment, the only sound was the storm. Then, deep beneath the earth, a low vibration shook the ground. The fire flared suddenly, burning brighter, almost unnaturally. Sandra stumbled back. "What's happening?" Keanu's eyes widened. "I think we just woke something up." The earth trembled again, stronger this time. From the direction of the beach came a distant metallic sound, something rising from the water. They both turned, hearts pounding. Through the sheets of rain, a dark shape was emerging beyond the waves, glinting faintly under the lightning. Keanu stepped forward, his voice a whisper. "That's impossible." Sandra grabbed his arm. "What is it?" He stared, unable to look away. "I think it's what he was hiding from." And as the shadow grew larger, the storm roared louder, as if the island itself had been waiting for this moment to reveal its secret. The secret beneath the waves, the storm raged harder than before. Rain pounded against the trees, lightning tore through the sky, and the ocean roared as if something ancient had awakened within it. Keanu and Sandra stood frozen, their eyes fixed on the dark shape rising from the waves. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't anything human. The metallic surface glistened like wet steel, curved and smooth, with faint blue lines pulsing across it, as though it were alive. Sandra gripped Keanu's arm. "What is that?" Keanu didn't answer. His breath was slow, controlled, but his heart was racing. The sight before him was something he couldn't explain. It looked like a massive sphere, half submerged in water, humming with energy. "It's been under the island," he said quietly. "The whole time." Lightning flashed again, revealing more of the structure. It extended deep into the water, connected by large metallic roots that reached toward the shore. Keanu realized that the vibrations they'd felt weren't just from the sea, they were coming from beneath their feet. "This is what he found," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "This is what he wanted me to destroy." The sphere gave off a low hum that grew into a rhythmic pulse, almost like a heartbeat. The air shimmered faintly around it. Sandra took a step back, fear flickering in her eyes. "Keanu, if this thing's alive, we need to go." "We can't," he replied. "If it's connected to him, maybe it knows what happened." Before she could respond, a sudden blast of light erupted from the sphere, shooting across the beach and striking the sand near them. They both fell back as the ground shook violently. Keanu shielded Sandra with his arm as waves of energy rippled through the air. For a moment, everything was silent. Then a faint voice echoed around them, familiar, broken, and filled with static. "Keanu, if you're hearing this, it means you found it." Keanu's eyes widened. It was his friend's voice. "What?" Sandra whispered. "How?" He stood slowly, eyes scanning the glowing structure. "It's him. It's a recording, maybe stored inside the machine," the voice continued, faint but clear. "I didn't disappear. I stayed. This thing, it communicates. Not with words, but with thoughts, with energy. It's not from here. It's been asleep for centuries. I tried to shut it down, but once it connects, it never lets go." Keanu's throat tightened. "He didn't leave. He was trapped." Sandra covered her mouth, the weight of realization hitting her. "That means he's still here." Keanu turned toward the sphere. "Or part of him is." The voice grew weaker. "If it wakes completely, it will reach out again. Not for me this time, but for you. It remembers." Then the message ended. The light faded slightly, leaving behind a soft hum that felt almost like breathing. Sandra looked at him. "What does that mean? It remembers?" Keanu shook his head slowly. "I don't know, but whatever this is, it knows me." Rain continued to fall in heavy sheets as they retreated to the shelter. Both were drenched and shaken, but their minds refused to rest. Keanu sat by the small flame they had relit, staring at the flicker reflected in his wet hands. "You think it's intelligent?" Sandra asked, her voice low. "I think it's something beyond that," he said. "Like it's aware, but not alive the way we understand it." "Then why him? Why you?" "Maybe because we came here," he said quietly. "Maybe we touched it once, without realizing what it was." For a long time, neither spoke. The rain softened into a steady rhythm, blending with the sound of the sea. Finally, Sandra leaned forward. "If it really trapped him, maybe there's a way to free him." Keanu looked up. "And if freeing him wakes it completely?" "Then at least we'll know the truth," she said firmly. "You owe him that." Her words struck something deep inside him. She was right. Whatever his friend had tried to do, he hadn't wanted this. Maybe his final message was a warning, but also a plea. By dawn, the storm had passed. The sea was calm again, though the metallic shape still glowed faintly beneath the surface. Keanu walked toward it alone, his mind steady, his steps slow. Sandra followed at a distance, watching closely. The structure hummed louder as he approached, responding to his presence. Small arcs of blue light rippled across its surface, tracing patterns like veins under skin. Keanu reached out, placing his hand on the cool metal. The moment he touched it, the world around him shifted. Sound disappeared. The air became heavy and light warped, bending in strange ways. He wasn't standing on the beach anymore. He was somewhere else, somewhere vast and silent. A voice echoed through the emptiness. "You shouldn't have come back." "Who are you?" Keanu asked. "I am what your friend found. I am what he became. Keanu's chest tightened. "You're not him. He tried to stop me. Now he is part of me." The light around him pulsed, and suddenly shapes began to form, memories flickering like broken film. He saw himself and his friend on the island years ago, laughing, working, unaware that something slept beneath them. He saw the night of the first storm, the flash, the wave of light, his friend disappearing into the darkness. "He didn't run," Keanu whispered. "You took him." "I needed a voice," the entity said. "A bridge between what is and what was. You are the other half." The light grew brighter, almost blinding. Keanu's heartbeat matched the rhythm of the sphere's pulse. For a second, he felt his friend's voice inside his mind, gentle, desperate. "Don't let it win." Then, everything went white. He woke up gasping, lying on the sand. Sandra was kneeling beside him, her eyes wide with fear. "Keanu, what happened? You were gone. You just vanished." He sat up slowly, his head pounding. "I saw him. He's alive but trapped. The thing, it's using him." Using him for what? To wake up. They both turned toward the water. The sphere was glowing again, brighter than before. The blue lines had spread into the sand, reaching toward the trees like veins of light. "It's spreading," Sandra whispered. Keanu stood, his expression firm. "Then we have to stop it, before it consumes everything." Sandra frowned. "How?" "Your friend said not to destroy it." "He said not everything lost should be found," Keanu said. "But it's already found us." He walked toward the shore again, the wind picking up around him. "It wants me. Maybe that's how I end it." Sandra grabbed his arm. "No. There has to be another way." "Maybe there isn't," he said softly. "He sacrificed himself once. Maybe I have to finish what he started." Before she could stop him, another wave of light burst from the sphere, washing over them both. Sandra screamed as the ground cracked beneath her feet, and Keanu disappeared into the blinding glow. The last thing she saw was his silhouette against the light, calm, steady, unafraid, as the sea swallowed everything around them. When the light faded, the beach was empty. The sphere was gone. The waves rolled gently as if nothing had happened. Sandra fell to her knees, staring at the horizon, her heart breaking in silence. "Keanu," she whispered. But the only answer was the sound of the ocean, and a faint voice in the wind that seemed to whisper back, "It's not over yet." The edge of silence, the air was heavy and still. Morning light shimmered weakly over the endless ocean, where only fragments of mist clung to the surface. Sandra sat on the beach, her body trembling, her mind refusing to accept what had just happened. The storm had vanished as quickly as it came. The sky was clear again, calm and blue, as though the world had reset. Yet the silence that followed was unbearable. She stared at the spot where Keanu had stood moments before. It was empty now, no light, no movement, no trace. Only the faint scent of rain lingered. She whispered his name once, then louder, but the ocean swallowed her voice. For hours she waited, searching the shoreline, calling into the trees, her voice raw from shouting. Nothing. It was as if the sea had taken him whole. By late afternoon, exhaustion took over. She sank to the sand, her hands covering her face. For the first time in years, she cried, not just for him, but for everything they had both carried quietly for so long. The pain of loss, the weight of memories, the unspoken bond that had always existed between them, it all surfaced now, fierce and unrelenting. "You can't just leave me here," she whispered into the wind. "Not like this." As the sun began to dip, she noticed something strange. The waves had started forming small, perfect circles near the shore, gentle, symmetrical, rhythmic. It was the same pulse she had heard from the metallic structure before it disappeared. She stood, slowly walking toward it. Her breath caught when she saw faint blue lines glowing beneath the surface of the water. She stepped closer, the sea brushing against her feet. A whisper touched her mind, not a sound, but a feeling. "You're not alone," Her heart stopped for a moment.
Keanu?
She said aloud. The glow pulsed once, brighter, then faded. She froze. If that's you, give me a sign. A soft current moved around her feet, swirling in patterns that almost looked like handwriting in the water, then vanished. Sandra stumbled back, her breath shaky. She didn't understand how, but she knew deep down that Keanu was still there, somewhere between the world she could see and the one hidden beneath the waves. Determined, she returned to the shelter before nightfall. She gathered what supplies she could find: flashlight, ropes, the remaining wood, and the notebook they'd discovered earlier. Under the flickering light, she began flipping through its final pages again. There were several blank sheets at the end. But as she turned one more, faint writing appeared, new lines that hadn't been there before. Her hands trembled. He's not gone. The island remembers. Follow where the light touches the sea. Her pulse quickened. How is this even possible? She whispered. She looked outside. The moon had risen, full, bright, casting a silver glow across the water. And in that glow, far beyond the waves, she saw it. A faint blue shimmer deep beneath the surface. Like a heartbeat waiting to be found, without hesitation. She packed her bag, lit a small lantern, and made her way to the water's edge. The sea was calm now. She stepped into it, the cool waves rising slowly around her legs. Every step forward felt like a call answered, like the island was guiding her. I'm coming, she whispered. Hold on. The glow grew stronger as she swam deeper. The water was clear and still, and beneath her, shapes began to form. Smooth metallic arcs, faint light trails, fragments of something vast buried in silence. It was the sphere, resting again, but smaller now, its glow pulsing softly like a sleeping heart. Sandra swam closer. Keanu, if you can hear me, I'm here. A surge of warmth spread through the water, wrapping around her. Then, for a moment, she saw him. Not solid, not fully there, just his outline. His face illuminated by blue light, calm and steady. You shouldn't have come, his voice whispered in her mind. She shook her head, tears mixing with the sea. I wasn't leaving you here. It's holding me, he said. I thought I could end it, but it's not something that can die. Then we'll find another way, she said fiercely. The water pulsed again, stronger this time. The light around the sphere flared, and Sandra felt herself being pushed back by a sudden current. Keanu's form began to fade. No, she screamed. Don't you dare disappear again! His voice came one last time, faint but clear. You have to finish what I started. The notebook. It holds the key. Promise me, Sandra. I promise, she shouted. The current intensified, dragging her toward the surface. She broke through, gasping for air, the moonlight blinding her for a moment. When she looked back down, the glow was gone. The sea was dark once more. She swam back to shore, trembling, exhausted and heartbroken, but alive with purpose. She opened the notebook again as soon as she reached the shelter. Beneath the last page, hidden under the fold, she found something new. A rough sketch of the island with a single mark near its center, a symbol shaped like a spiral, drawn around a point of light. The message beneath it read, Where silence meets stone, the truth sleeps. She traced the lines slowly, her mind racing. The cave, she whispered, the one near the cliff. It was a place they had passed on their first day but never explored, a dark opening half covered by vines. She packed her lantern and notebook again, her heart pounding. The path to the cliffs was steep and narrow. Waves crashed far below, their white foam glowing faintly in the moonlight. The air was colder here, filled with the scent of salt and mystery. When she reached the cave entrance, she paused, breathing deeply before stepping inside. The sound of dripping water echoed through the dark tunnel. The walls were covered in strange markings, symbols similar to those carved on the metallic sphere. As she moved deeper, the air grew warmer, and the faint blue glow returned. She followed it until she reached a chamber where light danced along the stone floor in gentle waves. In the center, something rested, a small crystal, pulsing softly with the same rhythm she had seen in the sea. Beside it lay a piece of metal engraved with her friend's name, and beneath that, Another word. Guardian. Sandra knelt beside it, her breath catching. The realization hit her slowly, painfully. The machine had not killed him. It had merged with him. He had become its guardian, bound to protect whatever secret the island held. And now, Keanu had taken his place. Her eyes filled with tears. "You did it, didn't you? You took his place to save him." The glow of the crystal grew brighter, almost as if answering her. She placed her hand over it gently. Warmth spread through her palm, and for a brief moment she heard Keanu's voice again. Calm, peaceful. "You found me?" Her voice broke. "Come back." "Not yet. But you'll know when it's time." The light faded, leaving her in soft darkness. She stayed there for a long time, listening to the heartbeat of the island. It was no longer frightening. It was alive, yes, but it was gentle, almost grateful. As dawn approached, Sandra stepped out of the cave and looked over the sea. The world was still again, bathed in soft golden light. She whispered to the wind, "I'll finish what you started. I'll protect this place." And from far beyond the waves, faint and tender, came a whisper that made her close her eyes and smile. "That's my Sandra." The sound of peace. The first light of dawn touched the horizon, spreading like a soft breath across the sea. The waves shimmered gently, calm after the storm, their rhythm steady as a heartbeat. Sandra stood barefoot on the sand, her clothes still damp from the night before. She hadn't slept. Her mind was full of images, the glowing sphere, Keanu's fading face, the cave with its crystal heartbeat. The memory of his voice lingered like a fragile echo that refused to fade. The island was quiet now. Too quiet. Birds had not returned, and the usual hum of wind through the trees had vanished. Even the air felt suspended, as though waiting for something. She could feel it deep in her chest, a pulse beneath the earth, faint but alive. She clutched the notebook tightly to her chest, the one Keanu had touched before disappearing. The last page was now filled with faint writing, new words that glowed softly under the rising sun. "When the sea becomes still, the silence will speak. Follow the echoes and you'll find me." Her breath caught. He had left her a path. She walked toward the cliffs where the wind carried the faintest hum. Every step felt like stepping closer to something sacred, something final. When she reached the edge, she saw the same patterns she had seen in the cave, spirals etched into the stone, glowing faintly under her feet. They pulsed slowly, matching her heartbeat. The ocean below reflected the morning light like liquid gold. As she watched, she realized the water wasn't moving naturally. It was circling inward, forming a slow, perfect spiral. It looked almost like a doorway. She whispered his name. "Keanu." The wind shifted. The waves grew quieter. And then, through the golden mist, she heard his voice again. Not faint this time. Not distant, but clear and steady. As if he were standing right beside her. "You kept your promise." She turned sharply, her heart pounding. He was there, transparent, glowing faintly, standing at the cliff's edge. His expression was calm, peaceful. His eyes filled with the same kindness she had known for years. Her eyes filled with tears. "You're real," she whispered. He smiled softly. "Not the way I was. But yes, I'm here." She stepped closer, her voice breaking. "I thought I lost you." "You didn't lose me," he said gently. "You helped me finish what he started." "What was it?" she asked. "What was this all about?" He looked out over the sea. "The island isn't just land. It's a bridge, a place where memory and energy meet. What my friend found wasn't a machine. It was a guardian. It watches, listens, remembers. When he connected with it, he became part of it. And now, so have I." Her tears fell freely. "Then you're trapped?" "No," he said with a faint smile. "I'm free in a different way. I can feel everything, the ocean, the wind, even your heartbeat. The world isn't smaller here. It's wider, infinite." She took another step forward. "Then come back with me, please." He shook his head slowly. "If I leave, the island sleeps again. The balance will break. It needs someone to keep it still. So you're staying?" His eyes softened. "Someone has to keep the silence alive. You once told me peace sounds better when shared. Now it's my turn to keep that sound safe." She pressed her hand to her mouth, her body trembling. "You always give too much," she whispered. He smiled, that same gentle smile she had seen 1,000 times before, the one that always carried warmth no matter how cold the world became. "Tell them I found peace," he said quietly. "That's all anyone needs to know." The spiral on the water began to glow brighter, the light reflecting in his eyes. "Keanu, please," she whispered. "Don't go like this." "Not again." He reached out slowly, his hand brushing her cheek, soft, almost weightless. She felt warmth spread through her skin, real enough to make her gasp. "You'll always find me in the quiet places," he said. "In kindness, in stillness, in moments when the world pauses just long enough to breathe." Tears streamed down her face. "I'll come back," she said. "I'll visit. I promise." He smiled faintly. "You already have." The light behind him flared, washing over the cliffs in gold and blue. His figure began to fade into the brightness, his voice lingering one last time in her mind. "Thank you for reminding me what peace feels like." And then he was gone. The spiral on the sea slowly vanished. The waves stilled. The island exhaled, the hum fading into a deep, endless calm. Sandra fell to her knees, sobbing into the wind. The sound carried far across the water, mixing with the song of the waves. Yet beneath her grief was something else. An unshakable warmth, a sense of peace she couldn't explain. She stayed there until the sun climbed high, bathing the island in light. Then quietly she made her way back to the yacht. Before leaving, she turned one last time toward the cliffs. There, in the faint shimmer of the morning air, she thought she saw him again, standing in the sunlight, smiling, the breeze moving through his hair. He didn't speak. He just nodded once, slow and calm, as if saying goodbye. She whispered into the wind, "Goodbye, Keanu." And the waves answered with a whisper that sounded almost like his voice, soft, kind, eternal. No goodbyes, only peace. As the yacht drifted away from the island, the ocean around it glowed faintly for a few seconds, then returned to calm. Birds began to sing again. The sea breathed easily, as if the world had been reset. Sandra sat quietly on deck, her hands resting on the notebook. The last line, written in soft, glowing letters, read, "Sometimes peace isn't the end. It's the beginning." She smiled through her tears, and somewhere deep beneath the waves, a faint light pulsed again, steady, warm, alive. The sound of peace had found its home.